Welcome back to Genmath 101. Today we're going to discuss Module 8.2, which is about intercepts, zeros, and asymptotes of rational functions. The objectives for our lesson for today: at the end of the lesson, you will be able to review zeros and intercepts of rational functions, define vertical and horizontal asymptotes, and identify asymptotes of rational functions. First, let us have this definition. The zeros of a rational function are the values of x which make the function 0. And the real numbered zeros are also the x-intercepts of the graph of the function. That means, kung ano yung makukuha nating zeros, automatically, that is also the x-intercept of our rational function. So, what are intercepts? The intercepts of a rational function are the points of intersection of its graph in an axis. So we have two types of intercepts. The first one is called x-intercept. The x-intercept of a graph of a rational function, if it exists, kasi minsan wala namang x-intercept sa isang given function, it occurs at the zeros of the numerator that are not zeros of the denominators. So, in other words, x-intercept, these are the points kung saan magmi-meet yung mismong graph and the x-axis. How about the y-intercept? So, kabaliktaran ng x-intercept, the y-intercept of the graph of a rational function, if it exists, occurs when x equals 0. And it is also the point where the graph meets the y-intercept. And ginagawa siya by equating x to 0. So, mamaya gagawin natin yon sa mga examples natin. So, the graph of a rational function is a continuous smooth curve with breaks that occur at the values of x where it is undefined. Generally, the breaks signal the presence of asymptotes. So, though we have a graph, makikita niyo sa graph ng rational function na meron siyang parang putol-putol na part. And pag may putol-putol na part, that means there is an asymptote. So what is an asymptote? An asymptote is an imaginary line to which a graph gets closer and closer as it increases or decreases at its value without limit. So, it is a vertical or horizontal line, which is imaginary, wherein parang palapit ng palapit yung graph sa kanya, pero hindi siya dumidikit dun sa line na yon. So, we have two types. We have the vertical and the horizontal asymptote. So, later, papakita ko din kung paano hanapin yung vertical and horizontal asymptote. So, for you to better understand those terms, I have here an example of a graph. And we're going to identify the x-intercept, y-intercept, vertical asymptote, and horizontal asymptote. So, in this figure, nakikita nyo yung graph natin, yung black lines, yung mga curves na makapal. So, in our graph, this is our x-axis, and this is our y-axis. So, kung mapapansin nyo, nagdikit yung mga graph natin sa x-axis or dun sa violet na line dito sa tatlong points na to. Color green na dots. And those points are called the x-intercepts. So in this case, we have 3 x-intercepts. On the other hand, sa point na to, nagdikit yung graph and yung y-axis natin. So that blue point is called the y-intercept. So in this case, isa lang yung y-intercept natin. And these lines, kung makikita nyo, those are the parts wherein parang nag-break or naputol yung graph natin. And those imaginary lines, which are in red color, those are called the vertical asymptotes. So in this case, we have 3 vertical asymptotes. On the other hand, At this point, kung makikita nyo, palapit ng palapit yung line sa kanya or yung graph natin, pero hindi naman sila dumidikit dun sa line na yun. And it is in a horizontal form or direction, therefore it is called the horizontal asymptote. So, in this lesson, hindi tayo gagamit ng graph for us to identify the x-intercept, y-intercept, vertical asymptote, and horizontal asymptotes. Instead, we're going to find their values by solving and using our rational functions. So, let me show you an example. Example number 1, find the x-intercept, y-intercept, and asymptotes of the rational function f of x equals x minus 2 over x plus 2. First, let us have the x-intercept. So, how to solve for the x-intercept? So, ang gagawin lang natin is to identify a factor or the numerator of our rational function. But make sure na walang kamukha yung factor na yon sa denominator. So, since in our function, the numerator is x minus 2 and wala siyang kamukha sa denominator, gagawin natin, you're going to equate that x minus 2 to 0. So, it will become x minus 2 equals 0. Next, we're going to solve for x by transposing negative 2 to the right side of the equation para x lang yung matira sa left side. Transposing negative 2 to the right side, then it will become x equals 2. So therefore, the x-intercept of our function is x equals 2. That means, isa lang yung x-intercept natin. How about the y-intercept? To solve for the y-intercept, using our equation f of x equals x minus 2 over x plus 2, we're going to change all the values of x by 0. So it will be f of 0 equals 0 minus 2 divided by 0 plus 2. When solving the right side of our equation, we have 0 minus 2 is negative 2 and 0 plus 2 is positive 2. Then we have f of 0 equals negative 2 divided by 2. And negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. Therefore, f of 0 equals negative 1. So therefore, the y-intercept of our function is y equals negative 1. Now, using the same function, we're going to find now the vertical asymptotes and the horizontal asymptotes. Let's start with the vertical asymptotes. Now, using the factors or the denominator of our function, in this case, we have x plus 2, and make sure na wala siyang kamukha sa numerator, we're going to equate it to 0. So we have x plus 2 equals 0. Solving for x, we're going to transpose positive 2 to the right side of the equation. Then it will become x equals negative 2. Therefore, the vertical asymptote of the function is at x equals negative 2. So in this case, we only have one vertical asymptote. How about horizontal asymptotes? To find the horizontal asymptotes, we're going to find the degree of the numerator and the denominator. When we say degree, it means the highest exponent in a given function or given expression. So in our case, x minus 2, ang pinakamataas lang niya na exponent, wala namang square, wala namang cube, therefore the degree is only 1. On the other hand, sa denominator, which is x plus 2, wala ding square, walang cube, Therefore, the degree is also 1. So, numerator, degree 1, denominator, degree 1. So, if the degree of the numerator and the denominator are equal, so in this case, they are both 1, then the horizontal asymptote y is equal to the ratio of the leading coefficients. When I say leading coefficients, these are the numbers na katabi ng pinakamataas na exponent. So in this case, we have x as the variable na pinakamataas na exponent, which is 1. So ang katabi niya dito, though wala tayong nakikitang number, it is automatically equal to 1. Sa baba din, since x lang siya, walang katabing number, therefore, 1 din yung leading coefficient niya. So, what you're going to do is to divide the leading coefficient of the numerator and the leading coefficient of the denominator, which is 1 divided by 1. Ulitin ko, gagawin nyo lang to kapag parehas yung degree ng numerator and denominator. So, 1 divided by 1 is equal to 1. Now, let us have example number 2. Find the x-intercept, y-intercept, asymptotes of the rational function f of x equals x plus 1 over x squared minus 4. So, in this case, since you have square on the denominator, make sure na naka-factor out muna siya para mas madali tayo makapag-solve. So, how to factor out x squared minus 4? By the way, x plus 1, hindi na siya pwedeng i-factor out since its degree is only 1. So, x plus 1 is still x plus 1 in our function. Now, x squared minus 4, to factor out x squared minus 4, pag may nakita kayong ganyan na may naka-square on the left side, minus sign sa gitna, and perfect square yung second number, gagawin nyo lang, rewrite x plus 1 on the numerator over factors of x squared minus 4. Paghiwalay nyo siya into two parentheses, the first factor and second factor, get the square root of x squared. So we have x and x. And then, maglagay ng plus and minus sign. And then, get the square root of 4. So we have 2. So, lagay kayo ng 2 sa left and then 2 sa right. Therefore, the factors of x squared minus 4 is x plus 2 times x minus 2. This is called the sum and difference of two terms. And these are the factors of the difference of two squares. Now, para saan yung mga factors na yon? So, in this case, sila na yung mga gagamitin natin to find the x-intercept, y-intercept, asymptotes of our rational function. Let's have x-intercept. So, again, paano natin makukuha ang x-intercept? Get the numerator. So, since our numerator is x plus 1, and wala naman siyang kamuka sa denominator, equate it to 0. X plus 1 equals 0. Then, we transpose positive 1. It will become negative 1. So, therefore, x equals negative 1. Therefore, the x-intercept of the rational function is x equals negative 1. How about the y-intercept? So, using the same process that we had in example number 1, using the equation, pwede nyo gamitin yung original equation or yung factored form. Kung hindi kayo sure sa factored form nyo, pwede naman gamitin yung original equation na x plus 1 over x squared minus 4. Anyway, we're going to get the same answer. So, in my example, ang ginamit ko is yung factored form, which is x plus 1 over x plus 2 over x minus 2. So again, to solve for the y-intercept, papalitan lahat ng x by 0. So we have f of 0 equals 0 plus 1 divided by 0 plus 2 times 0 minus 2. Performing the operations, we have 0 plus 1 is 1, 0 plus 2, we have 2, and 0 minus 2, we have negative 2. So we have 1 divided by 2 times negative 2. And 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. Since hindi naman natin pwedeng i-divide yung 1 divided by negative 4, therefore our final answer is f of 0 equals negative 1 over 4 or negative 1/4. Therefore, the y-intercept of the function is y equals negative 1/4. Now, let us have the vertical asymptote of the equation. So, in this case, kung mapapansin nyo, dalawa yung factors natin sa denominator. That means, dalawa din yung magiging vertical asymptotes natin. So, since wala namang kamukha yung x plus 2 and x minus 2 sa denominator, we're going to equate them to 0. Starting with x plus 2 equals 0. Transposing positive 2 to the right side, we have x equals negative 2. Then the other factor, which is x minus 2, equate it to 0. Transpose negative 2 to the right side, we're going to have x equals positive 2. So therefore, the vertical asymptotes of the function are at x equals negative 2 and x equals 2. That means we have two vertical asymptotes. How about horizontal asymptotes? So just like what we did in example number 1, we're going to compare the degree of the numerator and the denominator of our function. So in this case, our numerator is x plus 1 and the degree is 1. Our denominator is x plus 2 times x minus 2, or pwede nyo ding gamitin yung nasa original function na denominator, which is x squared minus 4. So since ang pinakamataas niyang exponent is square or 2, therefore the degree is 2. So paano namin gagawin yung horizontal asymptote if the degree is 1 of the numerator, the degree of the denominator is 2? So kung mapapansin nyo, hindi sila equal, wherein mas mababa yung degree ng numerator sa degree ng denominator. Kapag ganito yung case, or if the degree of the numerator is less than the degree of the denominator, kahit na hindi 1 yan at hindi 2, basta mas mababa yung degree ng numerator compared sa denominator, then the horizontal asymptote y is always 0. So therefore, our horizontal asymptote is at y equals 0. Now, let us have our last example. Find the x-intercept, y-intercept, and asymptotes of the rational function f of x equals x squared minus x minus 6 over x minus 3. So, tulad ng ginawa natin sa example number 2, kung mapapansin nyo, our numerator is not on the first degree. So, naka-square siya. That means you can still factor out x squared minus x minus 6. On the other hand, x minus 3 in the denominator, since nasa first degree na siya, hindi na siya pwedeng i-factor out. The question is, how are we going to factor out x squared minus x minus 6? So, ang gagawin natin, prepare tayo ng dalawang parentheses. Then, since 3 terms siya, first, factor out x squared. So, we have x and x. Next, to get the other factors, isip kayo ng dalawang numbers na kapag inadd, negative 1 yung makukuha nyo or yung number na nandito. Pero kapag multiply, negative 6 ang makukuha, which is itong number na to. Again, isip kayo ng dalawang numbers na kapag inadd, negative 1 ang sagot, pero kapag multiply, negative 6 naman yung sagot. So, kung naisip nyo siya, check nyo kung tama. Those two numbers are negative 3 and positive 2. So, let us check. Negative 3 plus positive 2 is negative 1. And negative 3 times positive 2 is negative 6. So, therefore, the factors are x minus 3 times x plus 2 all over x minus 3. Now, let us have the x-intercept. So, the numerators are x minus 3 and x plus 2, pero kung mapapansin nyo, may kamukha yung x minus 3 sa denominator. So, that means, hindi natin siya pwedeng gamitin for our x-intercept. Instead, ang pwede lang natin gamitin is x plus 2. Since walang kamukha yung x plus 2 sa denominator, we're going to equate it to 0. So, you have x plus 2 equals 0. Transpose positive 2. We're going to have x equals negative 2. Therefore, the x-intercept of our function is x equals negative 2. How about the y-intercept? Using the same process, pagkuha ng y-intercept, pwede gamitin yung original equation or yung factored form ng equation natin. So, ang ginamit ko dito is the factored form, x minus 3 times x plus 2 over x minus 3. So, again, pag hindi kayo sure sa factors nyo, mas magandang gamitin yung original equation. So, ang gawin lang, palitan lahat ng x by 0. So, we have 0 minus 3 times 0 plus 2 divided by 0 minus 3. So, we have negative 3 times positive 2 divided by negative 3. Negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. And negative 6 divided by negative 3 is positive 2. Therefore, f of 0 equals 2. So, our y-intercept or our function is y equals 2. How about the vertical asymptote? So, using our denominator, which is x minus 3, pero kung mapapansin nyo, may x minus 3 din sa numerator. That means, hindi natin siya pwedeng gamitin. And since wala nang natirang ibang factor maliban sa x minus 3, or since there are both x minus 3 on the numerator and denominator, at wala nang natira, therefore, there is no vertical asymptote. So, possible na walang vertical asymptote yung isang given rational function. For the last one, the horizontal asymptote, we're going to compare the degree of the numerator and the denominator. Numerator is at degree 2. Or pwede yung tignan dun sa x squared minus x minus 6. Highest exponent is 2. Degree of the denominator is only 1. Now, compare. Numerator, degree 2. Denominator, degree 1. So, unlike example 1 na equals sila, sa example 2, mas mababa yung sa numerator and denominator. Dito naman, mas mataas yung degree ng numerator compared sa denominator. So, paano yung pagkuha ng horizontal asymptote kapag mas mataas yung degree ng numerator compared sa denominator? So, if the degree of the numerator is greater than the degree of the denominator, then there is no horizontal asymptote. Again, pag mas mataas yung degree ng numerator compared sa denominator, automatically, walang horizontal asymptote. So that is how to find the x-intercept, y-intercept, and asymptotes of rational function.